In the quiet town of Caldwell, Idaho, nestled among the picturesque streets, stood a charming Victorian house, a hidden gem. For the Reynolds family, it seemed too good to be true. Mark and Sarah Reynolds were overjoyed when they found the house listed for a price they couldn't believe. After months of remote work following the COVID-19 pandemic, the opportunity to settle in a quiet town like Caldwell seemed like the perfect escape. Their son, Ethan, was just as excited to explore his new home. For the first 2 weeks, life in the new house was everything they had hoped for. Quiet, peaceful, and filled with the excitement of new beginnings. The house seemed perfect. Sarah soon befriended their neighbor, Linda, a kind woman who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. As the days passed, their conversations grew more personal, and one evening, over coffee, Linda shared an unsettling story about the house. Linda revealed that back in the 1950s, a tragic event had occurred within the walls of the Victorian house. A boy, around the same age as Ethan, had lost his grip on reality and killed both of his parents in a violent rage before taking his own life. The house had been sold multiple times since, but no one stayed for long. Sarah didn't think much of the story at the time. Perhaps it was just small-town folklore, but the details lingered in her mind. That night, the peace was shattered. Sarah awoke to the sound of Ethan screaming, his cries piercing the stillness of the house. When she entered the room, something was different. Ethan was sitting on the bed, his eyes wide, but his expression was strange, almost unnatural. Sarah tried to calm him, thinking it was just a nightmare. But then Ethan smiled, a twisted smile that sent chills down her spine. He told her to check under the bed, claiming there was a monster. But when she looked under the bed, she saw Ethan, her real son, trembling and terrified. What was on the bed wasn't Ethan. It was something else, something sinister. But before she could react, the figure on the bed stood up, its face twisted with anger and pain. The air around them turned icy, and the lights began to flicker. Sarah knew she had to act fast. She screamed for Mark, her voice filled with fear, but also with resolve. Together, they had to face the entity that haunted their new home. In a moment of realization, Mark held up the old photograph he had discovered earlier. The ghost stopped, fixated on the image of his family. In that final moment, the boy's spirit was freed, his anger dissolving into sorrow. The house grew still, and the family was left standing, shaken but safe. But even though the boy's spirit was gone, something still didn't feel right. Was this truly the end of the nightmare? Or was there something even darker lurking beneath the surface? The second story is about the lady in red from Hecker Pass. What would you do if you gave a ride to someone who was already dead? Along the dark roads of Hecker Pass, a mysterious figure has been haunting drivers for generations, a woman in a red dress. But her story is much darker than anyone could imagine. For years, residents and travelers alike have reported sightings of the mysterious lady in red, a young woman who appears late at night along Hecker Pass. Some say she's looking for a ride. Others believe she's searching for something much more sinister. One night, around midnight, a taxi driver from Watsonville was finishing his shift near Mount Madonna when a young woman in a red dress appeared by the roadside, waving him down. Something about her seemed off, but he couldn't say no. The woman gave him directions to a house near the bottom of Mount Madonna. As they approached the destination, the tension in the air grew thicker. The driver could feel her unease building, her eyes fixed on the dark house ahead. Confused by the strange encounter, the driver returned the next day to the house where the woman had fled. An elderly woman opened the door, and the driver began explaining what had happened the night before. The driver's heart sank as he pointed to the photo. It was her, the woman he had picked up the night before. But the elderly woman explained that her daughter had died years ago in a car accident while returning home along Hecker Pass. The tragic accident occurred decades earlier, but the young woman's spirit never found rest. Since that night, she has been seen by countless drivers along Hecker Pass, always wearing the same red dress she wore on the night she died. Over the years, many have reported seeing the woman in red, often hitching a ride before vanishing near the same house. Some say she's searching for her way home, while others believe her restless spirit is trapped between worlds. To this day, the elderly woman still lives in the house, waiting, hoping her daughter's spirit will finally find peace. But until that time comes, the lady in red continues to walk Hecker Pass, searching for the way home that she never reached. The last story from tonight happened in Blackwood, a forgotten town in the heart of nowhere, which secrets buried for centuries. But when the Rourke family moved into the old mansion at the edge of town, they had no idea what horrors awaited them. David and Sarah Rourke, eager for a fresh start, moved their family to the small town of Blackwood. After years of city life, the opportunity to live in a sprawling estate seemed too good to pass up. But Emily, their daughter, sensed something wrong from the moment they arrived. While exploring the attic, Emily stumbled upon something strange. Old photographs of the mansion's previous owners, their faces blurred, and a set of ancient books filled with symbols she couldn't understand. What started as small, unexplainable events soon became impossible to ignore. Emily would hear whispers in her room late at night, and shadows would dart across the walls when no one else was around. The Rourke family was eager to settle into the community, but something about the town felt off. Emily overheard hushed conversations, warnings about the old manor, and rumors of those who lived there before. As Emily delved deeper into the mansion's history, she uncovered the terrifying truth. The Blackwood cult had used the mansion as a temple for their dark rituals, believing it was a gateway to the afterlife. The ritual that would grant them immortality was never completed. In the dead of night, as a storm raged outside, the dark entity finally revealed itself. Emily, alone in her room, felt the air grow colder. The door slowly creaked open, and the faint sound of chanting echoed through the halls. With the spirits closing in, Emily knew the only way to stop them was to finish what the cult had started. Clutching the ancient book, she recited the words of the ritual, hoping to send the dark entity back to the underworld. The spirits were gone, but the darkness of Blackwood Manor remained. The family had survived, but they knew the mansion would never truly be free of the ancient evil that lingered within its walls.